Hello and welcome to a fairly short episode. The goal with this episode is really just to kind of dig into this thing and figure out, one, is it worth saving? And two, if we're going to save it, what direction are we going to go with it? To start off, if you didn't watch the other episode about where I found this, I got 4 bikes in a barn in a bundle deal. This is probably my top pick for wanting to do something with it because I've never seen one before. I didn't even know they existed until buying it, and also it's a pretty cool design. It's a 71 Suzuki MT50 Trail hopper, which was like back in the day when CT70s and Z50s and stuff were popular. So I guess this was kind of Suzuki's answer to the mini bike craze. I don't even know if it qualifies as a mini bike, to be honest. But in any case, it's fairly small, pretty cool, and also very rough. Ideally, what I'd like to have done by the end of the episode is have it more cleaned up, have the tires replaced and or at least a roller, and then also see if we can get the engine freed up. If I have time, I'll try to remove anything I'm not going to use. There's a lot of parts on here that I don't plan to put back, and also I'm not going to put any money into the engine yet because I need to find out, one, if it's worthwhile, because all the parts are fairly expensive. I can still get new parts, which is good, but like, for example, the jug is like $200. That's not horrendous, but in the total amount of things that it needs, that adds up fast. When all the parts of the engine are around that margin, they're way up there retail-wise, it's probably not worth it to dump all that money into the engine because, one, it's only 50cc, and two, I'm gonna have $1,000 in an engine that's only a little 50cc, and that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. That's where this episode comes in. We're just trying to figure out an avenue to go with this. So yeah, I would like to see the engine spin over by the end of this episode. I'd like for it to at least roll because it's really hard to roll around with flat tires that are totally delaminated and are garbage. It's kind of hard to envision what this bike used to be, but it used to have a headlight, taillight, horn, speedometer, odometer. It used to be fairly close to street legal. It wouldn't be street legal by today's standards. I don't know if there was a craze in like the 70s or 80s where people removed all that to make it look more like a dirt bike, but this is like the 3rd or 4th bike now where I've had all those parts removed at some point in the past. But headlight's gone, taillight's gone, the horn is still there. Speedometer, odometer is gone. Like, a lot of components are missing, and they didn't do a good job at removing it all because I can, the wiring's still in it. I don't know how I'm gonna do in this episode, but I would like to just remove all that stuff because I'm never gonna reinstate it. The only thing I might reinstate is the headlight and speedometer because that's actually useful to me. The other stuff is pointless to me and would cost too much to reinstate. Let's be real, I'm never gonna get a title and it's never gonna be on the road again. To find OEM turn signals, a taillight, all the other components to make this thing street legal would waste my time and money. I already made a couple purchases because when I got this, the rear axle was gone, so it was really hard to move around. So I bought a used axle and I also bought a kickstand for the same reason. It's easier to move around and store when I can actually prop it up and also roll it. This rim, however, is totally shot. There's a big old hole that runs from about here to about there. So literally a 1/3 of the wheel hoop is trashed. There's no saving it. I've tried patching stuff before. This is not a candidate for that because I bought used hoops and then treated them, obviously. And I also got new tires too. This will be fairly easy. I've said it before. Whenever you have old tires like this, they literally just weld themselves to the rim. This will never come off of here easily. Luckily, the hub just bolts to the 2 halves, so I don't have to fight this tire off these hoops. I can just unbolt the hub and then put the hub on the new rim and tire assembly, which is great. It's going to save a lot of time. The front, it's going to suck. I know I'm going to get halfway through and get frustrated and then stop filming. How did this get so stuck already? I literally just put this in like 2 weeks ago. Well, I was going to take this off on camera, but apparently the axle welded itself in there while it's been sitting in storage for 2 weeks. So we'll just pick up here in a moment. I'm not sure how you can see it, but this is just totally toast. The tube actually holds air still, which is incredible, but the hoop is trash on both sides. So there's only 4 bolts that hold the 2 halves of the hoops together, and then 4 that hold the hub to the hoops. You can hear how much rust is in there. There we go. I'm not even gonna bother trying to separate those. There's no way they're coming apart nicely, especially when that's what's left of one side. So yeah, just gonna clean up the hub real quick, also the floor, and then we can start getting ready to put everything back together. New hardware. So all I'm gonna do is get this all sort of lined up and then put air in it and then have it seat itself that way. Since we're using a tube, the seating process is really, really easy. That one doesn't really want to thread on. That's gonna suck. All the hardware is just hand tight right now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put air in it now and get it to seat fully. That way the tube is no longer in between the 2 halves and can get pinched. There's the part information if you need it. The camera's decided to have a stroke there and not record. The wheel's in, it looks pretty good. It makes the rest of the bike look pretty dumpy. Use some anti-seize this time, that way when I take it apart again, it won't fight me as much as it did last time. Listen to them bearings. That's some quality stuff right there. And the brakes work. Oh, they sound so bad. I'm gonna go ahead and actually not film the front wheel because it's the exact same process, but I know that one's gonna fight me a substantial amount more, and I'd rather not get halfway through it and then not even use that footage. Starting off, I'm just gonna start stripping it down, that way I can isolate things I don't need and then remove said things. Can't really see it, front wheel's done, total nightmare. It's got a really weird setup on how it's mounted, but it's out of the way now, so that's all that matters. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the seat, this top cover. We're gonna delete the oil tank, because regardless of what engine goes in here, it's not gonna be oil injected. We're just gonna do premix. Here's the battery box, which I didn't realize was there. So that'll go away, and then I'll pull the wiring too. You can see some of it here, because again, I'm not gonna use that. Normally this would unbolt right there, but it's broken. Looks like this tank has been off before because the spacers have been replaced with nuts. And I feel like this top one was also supposed to be 10 mil, but it's gone, so they just put a Phillips in here. Oh, the airbox is still here. We're just gonna cut the line because I don't want to risk yanking on it and breaking the nipple off of the oil tank. Another 10 mil ground. And then it looks like these 4 go to the engine, which we still need. Fuel lines are just beyond brittle. Airbox is loose. That's cool. Okay, I want to put a little WD-40 in these connectors and see if I can get them apart without breaking them. Green one. Ow, bitch. Blue. Okay, oh, that one broke too. Great. Well, 2 out of 4 is not bad, I guess. I don't know how this bezel comes off of this here. I feel like you have to turn it a little bit. I don't want to be too aggressive with it and risk breaking it. But in the meantime, we can get this plug out of the way. No, we can't. How did this come apart? What the shit? There's no way to release these? They're just stuck on together forever? I don't understand. Hey, so smart. And didn't break it. So I should just slide out now. Maybe, if the gas tank isn't in the way, which it is. Perfect. Ooh, we got some prizes in that tank. First, everything's a bit more cleaned up than it was previously. The engine is still really gross. I didn't want to put a whole lot of effort into cleaning it because it's probably not staying around much longer. However, I do still want to try to get it freed up because right now the engine does move a very tiny amount. It's been soaking in Marvel. It kind of just pours that onto the floor. Honestly, going off of the damage I see to the bare steel components, I'm thinking this thing's probably been exposed to the elements for 30 or so years. So I would say maybe 80s or 90s, it got taken apart for some reason and then got parted out. And like even the head studs here, they're really heavily pitted. But even so, I don't think I could even thread a nut onto the end of these studs. They're that damaged. While I was digging into it, I took this plate off to get access to the oil pump. Everything in there actually looked pretty good, but this was a really complicated oil injection system. There's multiple hoses running like through the engine because the carb is like not in the engine, but it's like underneath the cover. So the hoses that run to it run through the block. It's just a weird design. There's probably a reason they don't really use that style anymore. The other thing I noticed is this primary gear is probably not the original. So normally this little retainer washer, you line up the teeth and then it drops into a little groove and then you can just spin it however much you want. And normally you put 2 bolts in that mount it to the primary gear so that this washer actually stays in place. But if you have a look, if this comes off, it's only held on with rust at this point. There's not holes here in this primary gear for it. Nope, it just doesn't have holes in it at all. So I'm guessing this is just an aftermarket one. It looks like, I don't know, 16 or 17 millimeter maybe. We'll put a breaker bar on it and see if we can get to spin. I honestly think it will, given the fact that it already kind of spins a little bit. Oh, easy. It sounds horrible. It's like walking on the beach. Oh, I don't know what that was. Just grind in those bearings real quick. Well, that's about all we can do for this. I'll go ahead and put it back together. That way I don't have a million parts sitting around because they're all just sitting on a bench right now. And then we can wrap it up and then kind of develop an idea of what we should do with it. Because honestly, it'd be easier time-wise and also financially to just find a replacement engine. I'm looking at at least $1,000 worth of parts. And I don't really think it's worth it, to be honest. I can find a used engine for like $200. So that's probably the route we'll go. However, I'll just have to dig around and do some research and see what we want to do. I feel like it'd still be fun with 50cc, but they do make up to like 90cc. They're still the same sort of engine design. So I feel like if a 90cc or even like a 70 or 80 fits in here, that might be the route to go, especially when it's like $200 or $300 for one of those engines. We actually did have some good luck with this. You know, the engine's toast, that sucks. But of the parts I plan to keep, I was able to save them, or at least get them more usable. So like this shroud, I got it much more flattened out, just took a hammer and dolly to it and got it all smooth-ish. I need to weld it, like there's areas where it's actually broken, but it doesn't really matter right now. Like the rear mount is entirely broken off. I do have it, but I'd have to grind through the rust to find bare metal, and the metal's so thin I don't think I'd be able to. In any case, it mounts, it stays where it needs to be with only one mount, even though that's not ideal. So maybe somewhere down the line I'll make another mount for the rear. Well, white did come back through the rust, which is awesome. The second thing was this top shroud, which before these two front mounts were broken off, I luckily still had them. And the second lucky thing is this plastic's thermoplastic, which meant I was able to melt it to reconnect them. So anywhere there was larger cracks, there's little reinforcements of mesh. You can't really see it there. Luckily this piece, this was one big chunk. There's lots of surface area to reconnect. The other side, it's just this little tang that broke off, and also there's a crack right here. Both of which are hard to get to. My plastic welder actually broke during this. I wasn't really able to get in back here to get this connected, so this one's still not connected fully. But in any case, it's 80% better than it was. And on top of that, I was able to get the orange back through. I'm gonna stay on this more in the future at some point. This looks kind of weird. I like patina, but this is a little weird. So it started out orange and white, then it went silver, then it went purple, and then it went silver and red. The silver and red were like a really shitty paint job. It seems like they had like half a can each, like it was not enough, and they did a really bad job. So that was easy to remove. The purple and silver were very well done. Like they even masked the little holes here. There's a lot more of that left, but I just wanted to like get it back sort of together and also like weld and stuff before I make any real decisions with it. You know, my goal was to show more of the orange. I think we achieved that. Like this looks a lot better than it did previously, and there's definitely room to work with. Like we can definitely remove more of this silver and purple. So yeah, this is now done enough. We can go ahead and throw it back on. I can actually install it now, which is awesome. And then we can put the seat on, then we're pretty much done with this. Everything else that you don't see here has been removed and is not going back on, such as the oil tank and oil pump and stuff like that. And now the nasty ass seat. I think that's going to cut it for the dissection video. It was really just a matter of kind of seeing where we're at and what we have to work with. The engine is not salvageable, at least not by me. The options are, I'm going to go ahead and rule out putting on a garbage clone engine. I'm not interested in putting a life in, like 110 Honda clone on it. It's just not happening. I don't know why I would spend money to ruin it. The other option is, yeah, it's only 50cc, but like 50cc is enough. Like when I had the JR50, it was fun, even with my weight riding it around. However, it's just too small to ride. This is not that case. So 50cc might be okay. I might just leave it, or rather find a replacement. But I know for a fact that there's a couple different variants of higher displacement engines, like the 75 to 90cc engines from the same era that bolt right in. And all of those options, both higher displacement original and also original 50cc, are all around the same price, like $200 to $300 for a used engine. So, you know, buy that, do a partial rebuild, just top end, whatever. Do a full assessment reseal. As far as cosmetics go, I think at this point, I do like the orange and white combination. It's very 70s and I'd like to maintain it. The only thing about it is there's only one white thing, which is the exhaust shield. So I'm thinking maybe do the same thing I did on the Ricketts mini bike where I paint the wheels white, but like deliberately make it shitty. And also maybe like the top of the triple clamp for whatever assembly, and also the fender in white. The seat will obviously need to be redone. That's not an issue. I might work on the paint some more to get more of the orange out. I'm not opposed to the layers. I think it looks kind of neat. The only thing I need to get rid of is that P though. I have no idea how that happened from sanding. It's just a rogue P in the paint somewhere. I would like to get a headlight and a speedometer and odometer because these little mounts are not removable. You either have to cut them off or just leave them there. Leaving them there makes it look stupid. Cutting them off is just sketchy, and I'm not willing to ruin something original. Really, in my mind, the only option is to get a headlight and a speedometer and stuff like that. That's not going to change. I'm going to do that regardless. I'm going to maintain we're not going to rewire it to be street legal, so no brake light, turn signals, horn, none of that stuff. Like, I'm not interested in that. It would take way too much to reinstate that. I just want a headlight because it mounts the speedometer. That's literally all I care about. So in any case, maybe we'll call it the Rogue P. I don't know. So at this point, it's just going to go in storage until I find an engine. I'm going to go ahead and aim towards getting a higher displacement one. If I don't find one and I just end up getting a 50cc replacement, that's also fine. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good place to wrap it up. And with all that being said, I appreciate you watching and stay tuned. Fuck this body. Die, bitch. Okay.